I'd like an answer to the question, Judge.
You can't handle the truth!
I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti.
Rubs the lotion on its skin or else gets the hose again.
Welcome to After Hours AM, The Criminal Code, with your hosts, Joel Sturgis, Eric Olsen, and Dr. Clarissa Cole.
And good evening, and welcome to this edition of After Hours AM, The Criminal Code. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis, right along with me,
Eric Olsen.
And I want to be sure to wish everybody a safe and happy and fire-free. That's right, because I saw Good Morning America where they started a house on fire with doing their turkey like they do every year. A safe Thanksgiving. Have you ever seen that video where where they caution you, Eric, against frying a turkey in one of those turkey fryer dealies?
Oh, I have.
Oh, it's like every year. Okay, it's the same house. That poor house has been torched up millions of times, it seems. So I'm sitting there this morning, drinking my cup of coffee and watching Robin Roberts run for safety as the place pretty much gets engulfed in flames. Good times.
It's a towering inferno.
It really was. So if you are frying your turkey, of course, follow all the guidelines, which I'm sure you all will do. And have fun and eat lots, and more importantly, spend some time with your family. And don't go on the internet. Hang out with them, and you know what? If you can, not that saying you should, but if you can, one thing that kind of has bothered me, I guess maybe I don't know if it's my age or what's going on, Eric, is I see all these come shopping Thanksgiving. It's starting to annoy me that these places have pushed the shopping on Thanksgiving so hard.
Yeah. I agree. And in fact, it's already going back a little bit in the other direction. I'm hearing commercials for stores that are saying, and we will not be open on Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
So there, because we care about our employees and their families.
So,
and you who are open, you suck.
Well, yeah. I mean, you would think that they would take that day to, that's just me, though. And, of course, anyone that likes to shop, you know, no grudge against you or anything. But on the big turkey day, I get it. Some people are lonely. Some people have nothing better to do. I get all that. But, you know, I remember when I was a kid, nothing was open. You were lucky if you could find a gas station that was open. Now it's everything is open. Come on in. We're selling crap. We're selling Chinese goods at an affordable price. Get in here.
Well, it's just what's happened is it's the encroachment of Black Friday onto Thursday.
I know.
So remember how it got earlier and earlier?
I know.
We'll be opening our doors at 4 a.m., my friends. Well, now it's back past midnight and on to Thursday.
Exactly. That's my minute of ranting this week because we're only live one night this week. So, of course, one night, one and done here. So we will have a great past show for you, though, tomorrow night. So do not worry. But in the meantime, we got we have a great guest on tap. Very interesting and timely subject matter, man. Very,
but not
very
be
well
much
done.
more time.
No. Why don't you fill the people in?
I will. Well, if you are a fan of podcasts, I'm sure you've heard of this newish company that is putting them out in a very professional and highly produced manner. It's called Wondery, and they have a brand new one, just came out within the last couple of weeks, called Young Charlie, and their timing couldn't have been a whole lot better, what with the death of Charlie Manson, and it is about just that. It's a 6-part podcast covering the life of Charles Manson from, I assume, birth, more or less, up until the very night that he sent out his followers to commit those fateful murders. So that's what that's about. And we are talking with the writer of it, who's also a quite well-known Hollywood filmmaker, director, screenwriter. His name is Larry Brand. And so Larry will be on in this second hour of the program. It's going to be amazing.
It's going to be really cool. I did listen to all of them, by the way, because they sent us a bunch of them over. And actually, I found myself just really engrossed with it. I couldn't quit.
Oh, yeah, very good.
Very well put together. Like Eric had said, it's like a theater of the mind kind of feel, where you feel like you are right there watching Charlie Manson's life unfold. So again, they are putting on some good stuff. You can get them over there at Apple, of course, the iTunes over there. I do believe they're number 1, are they not?
Well, it was. I don't know if it still is, but it sure was when it came out. It may still well be. Doing really, really well. Obviously spurred on by the death of Manson, even more than, even better than it would have been. But yeah, I think it stands alone on its own quality. It's really well done. Really well put together, really well produced, very interesting information, and we will be talking to Larry about where he dug up all this information, how he put it together, and that's his buddy, the actor, the very well-known actor, Stephen Lang, who does the male voice on the podcast.
Yeah, and they do a really good job, so we will be, of course, talking about all that top of the hour. Don't go anywhere. Get your Charlie Manson fix as far as what he was truly like. I mean, there's a lot of factoids in there I had no idea about his life.
Right,
and
me too.
What a troubled person all the way through. Right, boy, he was born under a bad omen, really, is what he was. Even his mother was a criminal. So, I'm not giving away too much away because we're going to be talking about all that during the interview, but interesting stuff. So where are we going? Because it's time for a True Crime Headlines, as brought to you by thecriminalcode.com, and tonight, America's Most Haunted. So, where are you taking us, sir?
Well, first, we should do a shout-out to our missing third, Dr. Clarissa Cole, who is with us now basically every other week.
Who's that again?
She had to miss this week because it's her 1 week of the year when she visits family, and she's home in Wisconsin, I believe, for Thanksgiving, and we give her a shout-out and wish her well. Hi, Clarissa.
Hi, Clarissa. I was going to say, Clarissa, it's been so long.
Well, she joined us for 2 weeks. Now she's missed a couple weeks.
I know. She's like that, She just kind of comes and goes. No, she's a very busy lady.
Like the wind.
Yeah, exactly. So where would you like to go first?
Well, we might as well go in the order presented. And Uber is facing mounting scrutiny over a massive data breach. That's on top of everything else. All the being sued for all kinds of problems with drivers and with drivers assaulting people.
Yeah, I know, right? Uber has just been all over the news. It's just not.
Their founder was pushed out.
Yeah,
for a variety of reasons.
I remember that. Now, have you ever, and I'm sure you have not, but have you ever taken an Uber?
I have, but maybe once or twice.
What's it like? Is it kind of weird when they show up, someone's stinky car, and you're like, oh, man.
When we did it, I wasn't even really involved. I was just kind of riding along, and I was with much younger people for whom it was just normal.
Yeah.
I mean, my daughter, who's 18, and she and her friends, if they're going to be at a party or something and they're concerned that there may be drinking, I mean, they just get an Uber. They just fire it up. Don't even think twice about it.
What happens if indeed there's no candy in the van, if you know what I'm saying?
Candy in the van.
You get one of those creepers, right? That's the Uber driver with the van that has no windows in it.
You better be careful, and you better report them immediately. I mean, obviously, to a certain extent anyway, they have all kinds of policies, and they do follow up on it when people report it. But like anything else, you must take your own security into your own hands and be careful. And really, whenever possible, do not travel alone.
Yeah, well, I've read a lot of horror stories, and then we also read recently about the assistant district attorney caught on camera dressing down an Uber driver by threatening him with her position of power. So it can go both ways. So it's a little bit of an uneasy situation for both parties at times.
It's an interesting idea. Obviously, it has really taken off. It makes a lot of sense in this age we're in now with the kind of the race to the bottom. Just get everything as cheaply as we possibly can.
Yeah.
And so the idea of using quote unquote citizen drivers who have some time on their hands, want to make a little extra money. It's cheaper than a taxi, of course. Yeah. And taxis have issues of their own that we probably don't have to get into. But go ahead.
My problem with taking Uber, and I'm sure it's a great service, I've never taken it, is when it comes to driving, I'm a complete control freak. I'm one of the worst backseat drivers you're ever going to meet.
I, myself, am not very good at it either. I like you, am not very good at it.
Yeah, so when I get some stranger I've never met before, I'm going, are we all going to live?
You gotta, I mean, when I've done it a couple times I've done it, it was just coming back home from downtown Cleveland, and no one wanted to drive, and we had planned it in advance where we knew we weren't going to be driving. And so, we're trying to be safe, trying to be careful and all that. I didn't notice any problems, no issues. It went fine. Everything went about the way it should. And I'm sure almost all, in terms of percentage-wise, the great majority of experiences go fine, like anything else, I'm sure.
Exactly.
But you do need to be careful and pay attention like you would for anything under any circumstance.
I guess we should get to the meat of the story. What about this data breach? How does that work, and who does it affect?
All right. Uber is facing mounting scrutiny from lawmakers, states, and several countries after revealing a massive data breach affecting information on 57 million customers and drivers.
Wow.
That's a pretty big deal.
That's a lot of people.
For example, just to give a comparison, Yahoo, with their massive data breach, which I think was bigger still, but nonetheless, it had such an impact that they had to reduce. This was after the fact. They had to reduce their sale price for the company because of that data breach. So it's a big deal.
That is a big deal. That is a very big deal. So if you're ever taking Uber, your stuff, your identity could have been compromised.
Yeah, and what's really irking regulators and everyone is the company notified regulators just this Tuesday of the breach, but it took place in October of 2016.
Wow, a whole year ago? And now
more than a year ago.
They're just now getting to the fact, oh yeah, by the way, about a year ago here, we were hacked. Just letting everyone know. My God, that's really responsible of them.
Yeah, well, by Wednesday, the attorneys general of New York, Illinois, Massachusetts, and Connecticut all confirmed they were probing the breach. Ooh, that sounds...
Probing the breach. Hard.
Probing the breach.
Yes, vigorously. Vigorously, they're probing the breach.
I'm visualizing the many forms that could take. Overseas, investigations are being launched in the UK, Australia, and the Philippines. So there's kind of four main areas where they are facing scrutiny. The data breach affected accounts around the world, and afoul of an assortment of international laws requiring firms to notify consumers or government agencies after breaches, as in not a year later.
Yeah, timely fashion would have been nice.
In the United States, those laws are handled by the states, with every state except Alabama and South Dakota enacting laws protecting their citizens.
Well, of course.
So, in other words, this breach should have triggered the notification, or did trigger the notification laws in all 48 of the states that have them. So, I mean, it also violated the rules of Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico. So, I mean, it's just a flat out.
Yeah.
They thumb their nose at it.
Yeah, pretty much. They're like, what are you going to do about a government and your statehood? What you could do? And now we're going to see some backlash now because, quite honestly, I'd pay him cash and give him a fake name when I got in Uber. That's what I'd do. My name is Eric Olsen, and here's $100.
The only problem with that is it is so dialed in. It's the whole process goes through your smartphone.
Yeah, it's not like a cab where you can get in there and
everything goes through that app. You got to use the app. That's how you summon them. That's how you tell them where you are.
You make it sound like they're evil. We summon them.
I conjure you.
Yeah, you
Uber
conjure
driver.
them up. They just show up with their stinky 1983, Honda Accord. Yep, gotcha. Okay, moving on. Where we want to go next?
Alrighty. So anyway, they're in trouble. Just to summarize that.
Yeah, there's that.
And to close the loop, notification should have taken place within a maximum of 90 days.
Yeah, so they definitely didn't care about the law right there.
No, they really didn't. They kind of blew that one off.
Screw
they laughed
you,
at
law.
its face.
That's right. Screw you, law. We don't care.
They laughed heartily.
They did. A belly laugh, even. It was one of those. Yes. Okay.
All right. Well, it's not really criminal, but our good friend David Cassidy.
I know. I was getting headlines ready this week, and I had to include this because, music is such a big part of every show we do. We a lot of times we will touch on music, and we will again. In fact, we had Dave Perner. He wants to come on from Soul Asylum and talk with us.
Oh.
And, of course, Jack White has also said he might want to come on and talk with us. So in the future, we will be having maybe some more musical stars on, Eric. So look for that to happen in the near future. Anyhow, that is the reason why I added it, because we're connoisseurs of music, both of us. And he was a star. Here, let me get rid of the audio. He was a star in the 60s and early 70s in a big way.
Wow, that really did explode. The autoplay. Oh my God!
It kills you.
I hear. I forget which browser. One of the upgrades to one of the browsers can now, maybe it was Safari, can prevent any and all autoplay.
Oh God, I pray for that day to happen. I pray. Pray.
Yes, indeed. So anyway, yes, back to David Cassidy. Well, and just to finish your point. Not only do we have coming in the future musical stars who have some sort of either paranormal and or true crime interest angle or background, but we've had several on before who had some connection to the paranormal world or horror or just something going on.
Heck, man, we've had Rock and Roll Hall of Famers on this show. For crying out loud. So yes, absolutely, there has been a big call out again from the fandom that we have more of these pop stars on, and we will work on that, folks. We have heard you speak, and we will work on that.
All right, so David Cassidy, for those of you who are super young, he became he is still at his peak considered to be the single biggest teen idol of all time.
Wow, even big. Well, I suppose Elvis really wasn't a teen idol.
Well, he wasn't only a teen idol.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think you're right.
Whereas David Cassidy was pretty much strictly a teen idol.
Didn't he sing, I Think I Love You?
He sure did. That was the
big
Partridge Family hit, of course.
Do you ever sing that one, Eric? Do you ever sing that?
I never do.
No, you've never sang that in the prop sets at all when you're with your band?
No.
You never busted out just impromptu? Just
never. It's never. We've never even played it between sets.
Wow, man. Oh,
I know.
I'm shocked.
We're cold. I know. We're chilly.
Shocked.
So it's not a bad song, and he was a pretty good singer actually, and he had some hits over the years. Though, of course, once the show, the Partridge Family, was over, his star waned, but I mean, he came at it for a long, long time.
Yeah, he did. He was
still
a
going.
boozer.
Excuse me.
Yep.
I'm starting to get a bit of a tickle in my throat. My daughter, Lily, has had a really bad some sort of upper respiratory infection. I fear I may be getting it, but I'm fighting it off, my friends. I got my pineapple juice. I'm taking my drugs.
Yeah,
I'm feeling fine.
That's
tickle.
Right.
Except for the tickle.
So now, Cassidy, he battled alcoholism later in life.
A lot of problems. He drugs, alcohol, and he was only 67, but he had kind of total organ failure.
Oh my God! I mean, he really checked out.
Oh, he wasn't going to make it. Yeah, liver, kidney, everything just kind of fell apart.
Damn.
And he announced just recently, just months ago, that he was not going to be touring anymore. Unfortunately, because he was suffering from dementia.
Oh man, that guy just couldn't catch a break.
No, he was having a hard time.
So he passed away 67 years old.
Yeah.
And I was kind of surprised. I shouldn't say surprised, but 67 is pretty young by today's standards.
It is. It certainly is.
And so to see that icon of music, and especially probably more your era, maybe. Eric,
yeah.
Was he more just to kind of place him time wise? Was it early 70s?
Early 70s.
It was really a sweet spot when he was really big, and then of course he was born in 1950, and then just died. So I mean, our heartfelt condolences go to his family. But he was a talent. He really was. He was a great actor. Some would say a great singer. I mean, the guy was a double threat.
He began as an actor and was actually having some success. He was connected. His father was the actor, very well-known actor, Jack Cassidy. And, of course, Shirley Jones, who's, movie star and singer, musical theater star. That was his stepmother.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, she played his mother on the show, on the Partridge Family.
So they were father or daughter. I'll get it right.
Stepmother
and son. Sorry about that. And they were acting together, and she was not a bad-looking woman back in those days. She was not a bad-looking woman. So anyhow, our heartfelt condolences go to the Cassidy family, losing David so young.
Yep, and it is too bad. So
it really is.
No strong true crime angle. He had some issues. He was arrested on. He had some DUIs and this and that, but that's not the main point. No. The main point is we wish you well, David.
He will be missed. He will be missed by who I don't know, but he will be missed.
He'll be missed by women my age.
God, I'm a nice guy, right? I don't know who's gonna miss him, but I'm sure somewhere. Someone, some way, will miss the guy.
He will be. Well, there's a picture of him here in the bio that we're linking to, or that we're using as a reference. And as recently as 10 years ago, man, he still looked good.
Yeah, then he hit the wall, man. He hit the wall out of nowhere.
It did.
Hit the wall.
Now that one, we're feeling wistful about that, and there's no one did anything particularly awful.
No.
But this next one, parents charged with murder for starving their 6-year-old as punishment.
Isn't this insane?
Don't we hit this almost every week that something like this happens?
And it didn't even happen in Florida, which I was surprised.
That is bizarre. This is Illinois.
Really is. Yeah, right? Like part of the Bible Belt.
Right there in the middle of it.
It is.
Kind of between the two of us.
Exactly. I was shocked that this happened in Illinois. So what happened?
All right. Police say the child starved to death last week after his father and stepmother spent 2 years. Think about this. You're a parent. I'm a parent.
Yep.
We got lots of parents out there in radio land. They didn't feed him for 2 years.
How did this child survive that long? 2 years without eating? Wow. Okay, I'm reading further.
I mean, he didn't eat nothing.
Exactly. Regularly.
No regular
meals.
Withholding regular meals.
Exactly. And man, I yell at my kids about using all the peanut butter. I'll go down there to make some peanut butter toast. What the heck? Why?
Think about this poor kid. So this has been going on since December of 2015. So really almost 2 years.
Man.
6-year-old. Now, you know what a 6-year-old looks like, right?
Yes, I do.
6-year-olds can be pretty damn big.
They can be. They can be hulking little monsters.
This poor little guy weighed 17 pounds.
Oh.
17 pounds. Think of it.
That's just bone. That's probably what they're weighing is bone and muscle.
They were, as they should have been, obviously, charged with first-degree murder as well as felony child endangerment. They could face up to 60 years. Man, it should be more.
There's not many times I advocate the death penalty, but for these kind of people, Eric, don't you think it should be on the table? I mean, I get what you're saying, and what we've talked about this before, but the crime's so heinous. Do you think that maybe it should be on the table?
My feeling is this. In absolute terms, I am opposed as a matter of policy to the death penalty. However, if we have the death penalty, this is certainly a case where it should be used.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. I think that, like you, I don't think the death penalty should be really used as just a population controller. But what it should, that's what it is in jails. Hey, let's kill them all off. But I think that certain crimes, and first-degree murder is capital murder, would rise, and especially in this extreme case.
Oh my God, yes.
Would rise to that, meet that threshold of just being a horrible human being that should not even be allowed to breathe our air.
They had 6 children living with them. They don't indicate if they were theirs or not, although they're saying in the case of the one who died, the boy who died, it was his father and stepmother. They're also being charged for a 7-year-old who was in their household who is also malnourished.
Oh, my God. Buy the kids food.
The other 5 have been taken into custody, obviously. Authorities had investigated the couple previously, notified authorities there was inadequate food at the Roberts home. The authorities opened an investigation and closed it after a pediatric specialist said the weight of the boy who died was the result of a medical condition. Wow. There's
Really?
a malpractice suit.
Wow.
Oh, my
So
Lord.
they got some doctor to show up and go, nah, he died of a medical condition. What are you blaming these fine folks for?
Right. Unbelievable. I'd like to hear more about that part of it.
Yeah.
The couple did bring him in, the father brought him into the hospital, but of course he weighed 17 pounds.
Yeah.
And was about to die. The criminal complaint alleges that the parents knowingly and intentionally caused the boy to become extremely malnourished, leaving the said 6-year-old child to starve to death. Knowingly withheld food and nourishment on a regular and consistent basis. Oh, my God. I mean, it's just, terrible.
It really is. And really, if they're found guilty, they get 60 years in prison, which you know they'll never do 60. And they might pay up to a $25,000 fine and restitution. Are you kidding me?
That seems very low.
That's how much that child's life is worth, is $25K. I mean, this is just ridiculous. They should get life without parole, and they should be starved to death themselves.
I think that would be poetic justice.
You want to see what it feels like? We're gonna feed you once a week. Once a week, we'll feed you. That's it, and it'll be an apple and a can of tuna.
And you can complain when you weigh 17 pounds.
Yep. When you make it down to 17 pounds, then we'll take you to the doctor and we'll see if they can help you out at all.
Ugh,
that's
terrible.
Just horrible.
They don't go into it all. If there was some twisted philosophy behind this. I mean, it doesn't even sound like there was the pretense. Some of these stories you hear, we were starving the devil out of him, or
either that or just didn't want paper groceries. One of the two is going on. I mean, I got 4 kids at home, and believe me, they eat. Okay, my 2 oldest had this infatuation with peanut butter. Okay, peanut butter. The biggest jar in the world will last a day in my house. It's unreal. I'll walk downstairs. I'll grab my coffee in the morning before I go to work and do this and take care of that and make myself some peanut butter toast. But there's never any peanut butter, and I feel like I'm malnourished. I think they're malnourishing me. Is what's going on.
They may be. As I see you wasting away.
Yes. Yeah, I'm anything but wasting. But the point of the matter is, though, seriously now, on a serious note, this child, what a precious little child, to be treated this way by the people that are charged to love and care for them. And I could see going to bed without dinner if you're acting up. That's enough of that crap. You're going to bed. I don't want... We all probably went through that. But to withhold food like that and kill the boy, oh my God.
For 2 years!
For 2 years, these people need to be executed, my friend. Like I said, I'm not a giant advocate of the capital punishment. Right here, case in point, is one that would qualify in my mind. We have to run to break. We come back, more of your true crime headlines. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back right after this. After Hours AM, the Criminal Code, will be right back after a word from these sponsors.
Green light. Hey girl, school zone. I'm getting hungry. Car changing lanes. You want to meet me for pizza? Stop sign. Intersection clear. Yeah, street. Pizza sounds good. Ballin Street? Girlin Street!
It's hard to concentrate on two things at once, like texting and driving. Stop the text, stop the wrecks. How will you stop texting and driving? Tell us at stoptextstopwrecks.org. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
This is Jen McGowan, founder of Wayward Souls Promotions, a company dedicated to helping individuals, teens, radio shows, and others that are seeking exposure for their individual events, conventions, and shows. We offer a wide variety of advertising, such as web-based article, social media posts, podcast advertisement, and so on. Contact us at paranormalpromotion@gmail.com, visit us on Facebook at Wayward Souls Promotions, and visit our website at www.waywardsoulspromotions.com.
Welcome back to After Hours AM, the Criminal Code. And welcome back to After Hours AM, everybody. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis, right along with me,
Eric Olsen.
And this is, of course, the true crime edition of After Hours AM. And you're going to want to stick around for the top of the hour. We got a great show on tap, something that's very timely, something that's very cool. If you're a fan at all of, or have an interest, I shouldn't say a fan. Hey, if you're a fan of the Tate murders, you're going to want to hang around for this one.
They get a 10.
Exactly. If you're interested at all about the infamous Sharon Tate murders and Charles Manson, you're going to stick around because there's a new podcast out there called Young Charlie that's just burning up everything. Over there at iTunes, just check. They're ranked way up there. And, of course, we will be having Larry Brand on the show, and he is the writer of Young Charlie. So you'll learn maybe a little bit more like I did and Eric did about Charles Manson and who he truly was, because, of course, he did die a few years ago, so it couldn't be any more timely. So that being said, it's time to dive right back into the scumbagdom that is true crime headlines.
Yeah, well, we go from a couple who murdered their 6-year-old boy by starving him to death. Now we got someone who was killed at his Airbnb. So, and before that, we had the data breach at Uber. So it's all the new industry, right? All these new businesses that have exploded over the last several years are having lots.
They are having a little bit of
growing problems.
Yeah, they're having a little bit of trouble over there. You know.
All right, so here's this tale. We got death at the Airbnb. All right. Ramis Januzzi had been paying less than $22 per night, which isn't bad, to rent a room at an Airbnb in Australia. 36-year-old had been staying at a home in a beachside suburb of Melbourne while he sorted through some personal problems. But he told a friend he did not like the energy there. He reportedly had an argument with housemates over money. Then Januzzi packed up his belongings one night last week and prepared to hit the road. But he was allegedly attacked by 3 housemates on the front lawn, raped, and murdered.
Oh, my God. What did they say why they did all that to the poor guy?
Oh, my God. Authorities said that the 3 men, including, 36-year-old Craig Levy, 37-year-old. So these were not real young people.
No.
These were people who certainly should have known better. 37-year-old Ryan Smart, 41-year-old Jason Colton have been charged with murder. Colton is, oh my God. Colton is also accused of raping Januzzi with an unknown object. I guess they were upset with him.
Oh, it's probably a broom handle. Oh.
Ay. Victoria Police said in a statement the officer responded to a call on October 25th regarding an alleged assault. Januzzi, who was suffering from heart failure, God, he was only, what was he?
Yeah, not very old, in his 30s.
36. Suffering from heart failure, was found in the front yard, rushed to a hospital, where he was pronounced dead. Cause of death has not yet been released. His Facebook page is filled with messages of people remembering one of the most genuine, loving guys and one of the most pure, loving souls I've ever met. I can't believe you're gone, but I only hope you're at peace. All these heartbreaking messages. Airbnb said it's deeply saddened and outraged by the tragedy. Yes, of course, because they'll end up paying for it.
Yes, exactly. So this guy gets a hold of his buddies, his family, whoever, says, I'm not really liking the energy here. Goes to leave. They attack him in the front yard and sodomize him with an unknown object and kill him.
So Airbnb, well, they're just outraged. They are so outraged. They've removed this listing from their platform.
Oh, my God.
Wow.
And they
Unbelievable.
And they probably sent a strongly worded letter.
I'm guessing they did. And maybe they waved their private parts in the direction of the house.
They might have. You just never know.
The Age report, this is the newspaper that reported this, reported a review from August from a woman who stated she did not stay in the house because her door did not lock and she did not feel safe. Another reviewer wrote the home was not secure and had several issues.
Yeah.
Better way to spend a night. Buy a $50 hammer, smash your hand with it, and go to the emergency room.
You know, that is a great way to spend the night. You get care. People, you walk in, you got great magazines to read, you got time to kill. Free cable TV. Come on.
People are nice to you.
Exactly. You might even get some drugs at the end of it that make you feel good. Then you leave.
So we don't know anything. That's it. We don't know anything about what the dispute was about, other than vaguely it was about money. We have no idea why this guy was so viciously attacked.
Yeah.
My goodness. And that's it.
Man, damn. See, now, I've never stayed at Airbnb, and after all these stories that we've covered about Airbnbs in the show, I don't know if I ever would. Have you ever stayed in one, Eric?
Let's see. We've used similar, we've actually done it for the Olympics, and so that goes way back. We did it in Australia, actually, and we did it, though not Melbourne, we did it in Sydney, and we did it in Barcelona, and let's see, we did not do it in Seoul, Korea, and we did not do it in Atlanta. In Seoul and Atlanta, we stayed in timeshares. Anyway, we did like a house swapping kind of thing for both Barcelona.
So they came to your house?
Yeah, or if they didn't, if the actual owners of the house we stayed in didn't, it was kind of like one step removed from them.
Sure.
So it's like a barter situation.
Gotcha, where you...
So similar, in other words.
Yeah. They want to come to the States and you want to go there, so you got to just swap lodging.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you get a nice place. You know, you get their place, and it's well maintained, well stocked. You know, you got to see the pictures and everything.
Or full of cameras, or people waiting outside in the front yard to murder you. You know.
Yeah, and
there's that.
All the various holes in the walls in the bathroom. What's going on there?
Entertainment center, I see.
But no, we had a great, really nice experience in Australia, in Sydney, with that, using that route, and it's much more homey, obviously, than a hotel.
Sure. Well, I would imagine that 99.9% of the people that use these have great reviews of the program and how it works, and it's the 1% or the 1/10% that has these stories. Like, and then, of course, it's something that, it's a lot cheaper than a hotel. I would imagine, though, their Yelp ratings taking a big nosedive after this over in that area. But hey, what the hell? Try it. You might like it.
Exactly. So, I mean, these new platforms, these kind of citizen-based, so you're talking about staying in people's actual home, or... That's not all it is. A lot of times people just maintain that property in order to use it for Airbnb.
Gotcha.
And/or we're talking back to Uber, people using their own vehicle. So it's kind of that it's that gig economy, they call it, right? That's
Yeah.
kind of developing now because the bottom has fallen out of some of our traditional industries, and people don't have the lifelong careers with the same company that they used to have. You know, my dad was at the same company his whole adult life.
Sure.
Retired from it.
Yeah.
Probably most people he knew were the same.
Yeah.
And it's just not that way anymore.
Alternative
obviously.
money-making endeavors.
Yes.
Is what they're looking for. And hey, very cool. I mean, I'm not saying that you shouldn't use Airbnb. I'm just saying I would think twice personally because, you know, I don't know. I when I think of Airbnb, I think about sleeping in someone else's icky bed. Like, ugh, did they change the sheets at least? You know, that kind of feeling.
Yes, there's lots of standards. They're supposed to do. It's supposed to be better than a hotel, not worse than a hotel.
Ah, got you. They strive for better than a hotel. I can see that. I can see where there is some attraction to being in a home versus some hotel room where you hear everything else going on and screaming and partying and weird things.
Exactly.
Yep, I was staying in a hotel.
It's just that the vibe, you know. It's
I got a hotel story for you.
Whip it on.
When I was in my, must have been about 26, 27 years old, I went to go see Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers with Jackson Browne opening live. And this was in Minneapolis, St. Paul, but it was kind of in a, you know, we ended up staying in not the greatest part of Minneapolis, St. Paul, is where we could find lodging for the night because they're appearing at the Target Center, which is downtown. So we ended up going to this little hotel, and, you know, the normal hotel where you go and you check in, you walk to your room, and all the doors are facing out, and you go in your room. We were there about 2 or 3 hours. Next thing you know, we hear gunshots from one of the rooms. And then, if that's not nerve-wracking enough, there evidently was a lady of the night that was turning her business in the room next door. So we heard everything. Everything. So here we are, terrified, between the gunshots, the prostitute, and the I guess, a drug raid happening not too far away either. So here we are.
It was like an episode of Vice Squad.
It was horrible. We're sitting there, and we hear pow, 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 pow. And I'm like, that is a gun. If I ever heard a gun, that is a gun. So then there's this hooker right next door to us going, hey, boys, you in for a long time? No, we're just staying one night. Well, be sure you stop by and say hi. No, we're not going to stop by and say hi. No, Typhoid Mary. We're not doing that. So here we hear gunshots. We hear the prostitute plying her wares, very loudly, I might add. And there's a drug bust going on, all in the same building. What do? We cower in the corner because we're both from small towns. We're not used to all this activity going on. So the night passes, and neither one of us slept. Oh, my God. We were in the corner of that room, and we had a lamp. I had a lamp in my hand waiting for someone to come to the door. So we waited, and the sun rose, and we couldn't get out of there quick enough. The next morning comes, and you'd swear nothing happened. It was smooth, calm. You know, we were expecting to see body chalk outlines. We walked out and everything else. Nothing. It was like an episode of Twilight Zone. Nothing was out there. It was weird.
That reminds me of an almost, well, in some ways similar hotel story, and this was absolutely right in the middle of Manhattan, so right in the heart of it all. And this was my way back. I was young, my first marriage. I was in my 20s.
Sure.
And we had a crazy fun night out in Manhattan. We were out until after 4 in.the morning because that's when the bars close in Manhattan at 4 in.the morning, or at least then they did.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. And so we stumbled to our hotel, and it was a nice place. No complaints about that at all. But we got in there at 4:30, maybe asleep by 5. Well, this was not super well insulated, and there's so much going on.
Yeah.
By 6 in.the morning, you're hearing the trash guys. You're hearing the horns starting to honk. Things start happening. And we hadn't thought ahead. We didn't have a fan with us because now, I mean, for the last however many years, I don't go anywhere.
Oh, yeah, you got to have a fan.
Without a fan.
I do the same thing. I bring a fan with me. You need that noise. Yeah.
Gotta have the white noise to block out everything else.
Yep. Exactly.
If we'd have had that, we'd have been fine. But the bottom line was we had about an hour and a half of really, really deep sleep, and then never got back to sleep again because we're in the middle of Manhattan.
That is the worst.
There's stuff going on. Even though we were way up high, we're maybe in the, I don't know, 15th floor or something like that. But nonetheless, it was so noisy. And we were trying to sleep in the daytime, of course.
You know,
we're up.
Speaking of noisy hotels, I know we're way off the beaten track here, but that's what we do around these parts and after hours AMs. As we go on tangents.
We circumlocute.
Yeah, we go on tangents once in a while. I stayed a couple years ago. Me and the wife were at some event, and there was an American Inn. So I went to the American Inn, and you know, it was like, it was near our anniversary. So I'm like, hey, honey, let's spring for the really nice room. Why not? With a jacuzzi, the whole bit, right? So it's like $200 a night. So we go in there. We get the best room they offer. And I didn't realize that it was located next to a train track. Like, right next to. Like, there's the train track. You look out your window. So about every half hour, a train would come through. I felt like that part in the Blues Brothers where he lives in that apartment. Elwood is living in that apartment and the train keeps going by. That's what it was like in this ultra expensive $200 night. For me, it was ultra expensive. $200 night hotel room, and every 15 to 20 minutes, oh, here comes another train, you son of a guns. You know, so I get up next morning, they're like, Sam, how was your stay? It sucked. Well, why? Who the hell puts a hotel room right next to a train track? Who?
As if they had never heard that complaint before.
Yeah, they did not look at all shocked that I was complaining about the trains. And the guy says, you know, we find that works the best is we do, if you would have called the desk, we do offer earplugs.
Well, thanks. Earplugs and a fan.
Yeah,
an industrial strength fan.
Yeah, because, I mean, I'm talking, we are right next. I mean, you could probably...
You don't only hear it, you feel it.
Exactly. You could probably pee out your window and hit the tracks. That's how close it was. Right? And so, here comes a train, boom, 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 and you felt every rumble. I mean, we didn't even sleep. It was ridiculous. So then, of course, I wanted my money back, and of course, they won't give me back my money. So, you know, a harshly worded letter later on ensued.
Actually, they really should have given you some kind of discount.
They should have, because I was like, are you serious? You guys charge $200 a night for basically to sleep at a train station? Thank you.
That isn't right.
No. So
I mean, did they warn you in advance?
No, they didn't say anything to us. They didn't say a word to us. We booked the hotel. I didn't really think about it because you don't look for a train track, right? I mean, because I didn't see it. And because it was kind of tucked
dark.
Away. Yeah, exactly. It was dark out, so I wasn't thinking about train. So then we're laying there, and I'm watching a little bit of TV, and first train comes through. I'm like, holy crap, what is that? And of course, as soon as they hit the hotel, what do? They hit their whistle.
Oh, no.
Oh, do you know how loud those whistles are? Oh,
I do.
All night, every time it come through, because there's an intersection not far, hitting that damn whistle. Like, are you serious? Yes. A lot. You know,
it couldn't possibly be unusual that they would get complaints about.
No, I don't think they were. They were not unused to it because they didn't bat an eye. I would have rather taken Typhoid Mary into the next room and heard those noises over a train going by every 15, 20 minutes. So anyhow,
that's funny. Well, that is unfortunate. I'm sorry that happened.
You know, crap happens. What do you do, man? So what's next?
Alrighty then. Well, this is interesting. The Fatal Attraction Killer. I didn't even know there was a real Fatal Attraction Killer.
Me neither.
But obviously there was. And so that whole story, the movie, was based on a real life person, a real life event. Wow. And her name is Jennifer Reale. I don't know how to pronounce it.
I think it's Reale. I wonder if she boiled a rabbit. That'd be my question to her. If we ever talked with her. Hey, by the way, Jenny over there from the block, did you boil a rabbit? I said, no.
I like her grinning her mouth off in
I know. Look at
her,
that. She looks all happy.
Shot.
Yeah.
Look at, she's all cheerful and smiling
she
away.
She is. She's thinking about trains next to hotels, going, "Man, at least I get a good night's sleep."
All right, so I'm trying to get down because this is all an update. Oh, she's looking a little older now.
Oh yeah, she's not quite the Rose she once was.
No, but of course that was 27 years ago. All right, so what happened was, let's go back to the original post. This is from October 20th. Jennifer Reali, we're saying, maybe Reali, nicknamed the Fatal Attraction Killer after slaying her lover's wife, has been denied parole 3 times over the past 6 years. She's now made her 4th appeal, reportedly arguing, "I can't honor my victim's death by being a hooligan."
A hooligan?
A hooligan,
okay.
And touting a religious rebirth that has included the release of multiple gospel music albums and regular online essays celebrating the Christian faith.
Oh, she found God. Good for her.
Yes. Well, that's not terribly unusual.
No.
Maybe I'm not a normal believer in Jesus, she said in her most recent post on the website Inside Out Ministries, which focuses on helping troubled ex-offenders. Maybe the crazy impossible things God has done for me aren't evident in your life, or maybe they are and you just haven't noticed them. That's possible. So I believe it appears they're saying that she is sincere.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
In her transformation.
Sure.
As has been previously reported, Reali burst into the public consciousness in 1990 after she ambushed and murdered Diane Hood, who was just leaving an El Paso County support group for those afflicted with lupus. Oh, my.
Oh, my Lord.
Reali had disguised herself ninja style.
Ninja style. Shows up like Donatello.
Anytime you say the words ninja and style together, you have to add an E at the end, so it's ninja style-y.
Exactly. I always think of the teenage... Now Michelangelo in my head now with the big shell.
Yes. Well, they all do, because
Yes.
they're all turtles.
Yes, exacay.
And they're teenagers.
They are,
ninjas.
because they're in the 1990s. What was big? Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Well, then they're back for the, I don't know how many rebirths they've had.
Yeah.
All right, but while she did commit it, the motivation for the killing is said to have come from Brian Hood, the husband with whom Reali had been having a torrid affair. Their first sexual encounter, she later confessed, took place on top of the washing machine in her laundry room.
Oh, my Lord. Wow.
And guess who wrote that? Alan Prendergast, who we had on the show a couple months ago.
Yeah. Really? I didn't know he wrote this. Interesting. Interesting. Interesting.
So she, the Fatal Attraction woman, claimed that Hood manipulated her into doing the deed, with him allegedly quoting Bible verses in a bid to convince her that that this particular killing was part of God's plan.
Another question I have for her is, was she hoodwinked?
Well, she doesn't want to be a hooligan, as we know.
So she's up for parole.
Yeah. Well, so in the end, Hood was sentenced to 37 years, so he didn't get off easy.
No, he didn't.
But Reali received life. She wasn't supposed to have a shot at parole for 40 years, but the governor, Bill Ritter, persuaded by reports that she'd been a model prisoner, tweaked her sentence as he was leaving office. Although her conviction remained, she was given a chance at parole earlier than previously allowed. All right, so let's check in with her. So she's done all these things and been the model prisoner and has found God, and now she's 55 years old.
Yep.
And, blah, blah, blah. She's in the, let's see. According to the Colorado Springs Gazette, she's currently allowed a certain degree of freedom thanks to her enrollment in the intensive supervision parole inmate program. She has an apartment in Denver and is allowed to drive to and from work and chemotherapy treatments for cancer. So it appears, anyway, and let's go back now to the top because there are 2 updates. So what are those updates about? So, yeah, it's one of these cases where she is pleading to have been a woman, just basically...
Yeah, in love. Yeah, doing the wrong thing.
With the wool, mesmerized by a intense physical relationship.
Yep. And so she wanted her man, and the only way to get her man was to get the wife out of the way.
So, now she has been granted parole.
Really?
Yes.
So...
She will get out on December 12th. So this is update number 2. Fatal attraction killer granted parole following a bumpy ride through the criminal justice system. Excuse me. In 2011, her sentence for murder was commuted by then Governor Bill Ritter, but the state parole board subsequently rejected 3 appeals centered largely on the depth of her Christian faith. However, they have apparently now been persuaded.
It's in the light, yeah.
And she will be getting out.
Well, she has hit songs.
I guess you could call that a success story, right?
Yeah, well, I like the related story. Jennifer Rowley sings, Fatal Attraction Killer now sings On Fire for Jesus.
Well, she's a passionate woman, it would appear.
Wow.
Right?
I'm burning for you. Not like the rabbit I did in the water, but I'm still equally burning for you.
Oh, golly. Now, I don't know how much of the movie was...
I will not ignore Dan.
The real McCoy, but holy cow, it's a pretty creepy...
That is creepy.
It's a creepy tale, I must say. So, it just shows you the depths that people go to. People do get mesmerized. Well, look at the Manson family.
Well, yes, and that's... We're going to be talking about that, of course.
Very shortly.
Top of the hour here, we're going to be diving deep in that Manson story and basically who Charlie Manson was and because he's since passed away. But we're really going to dig deep into that whole thing, because quite honestly, Charles Manson, I did look at a lot of his interviews. I don't know if he was crazy just to make people go, man, that guy's crazy, out of fun, or whether he was truly 100% just nuts.
Well, what's interesting to me is, and we're going to hear about this because this comes from the podcast, that it appears that at least, a fair amount, I'm sure he had some natural abilities and some natural charisma, but he really bought into the whole Dale Carnegie course thing where,
really
make friends and influence people.
Yeah, he did. And
it turns out he was a Scientologist.
But one other thing I did learn from doing all of my research is all evil things ultimately emanate from Ohio.
Is that what it is?
Cleveland,
from West Virginia.
No, he was born in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Was he now?
He was born in Ohio.
I missed that part. Well, that's the southern edge of Ohio.
But still,
you know what they say about Cincinnati?
What do they say?
It is the northernmost southern city.
Well, okay. Now you're
There's a certain amount of truth.
I know where Charlie got all his weird rhymes from right there. Look at you. You're not making sense either. What are you talking about? Northernmost southern. I get it. I kind of get it, but it's definitely strange. But yeah, he was from Cincinnati.
It is the city that could still. It is the city that lies the farthest to the north that could still be characterized as a southern city.
You're right, and if my team was the Reds, I'd be angry too.
Well, but every once in a while, the Reds just decide to be great and win the World Series.
Once in a blue moon, they will do that. But yeah, we'll be talking about that at the top of the hour. Larry Brand. He is the writer of Young Charlie, and of course, that's a podcast that's up there for download. Go to iTunes, of course. Get that, and it's really a theater of the mind kind of presentation. Beautifully done. And you're going to want to get that. It got some real heavy hitters also doing voiceover work. So it's really worth your time to listen to. I listened to all 6 parts, my friends, and it was very worth your time. Very interesting, but we're going to get out of here. We're going to go to break. We're going to bring Larry on. He can tell us all about it. What am I talking about it for? We'll be right back right after this. After Hours AM, the Criminal Code. We'll be right back after a word from these sponsors.
Ranger Station, Ranger speaking.
Yeah, hi. I'd like to report a bear sighting.
Location.
My backyard.
Oh, your backyard. Try telling a bear that.
I did, and this bear talked back.
Talking bear, that's rich.
No, wait, it was Smokey Bear.
Smokey? Why didn't you say so?
I did say so.
Continue.
I was burning yard waste.
No, boy.
He told me to burn legally and responsibly, and to remember that if it's too hot to touch, it's too hot to leave.
And as always, he's right. You know, 9 out of 10 wildfires are caused by humans. That means 9 out of 10 wildfires can be prevented.
Yeah, I know that now.
Thanks to me.
Actually, thanks to Smokey.
As usual, the talking bear gets all the credit. Get your Smokey on. Always burn responsibly and contact your local fire department for open burning regulations. Because 9 out of 10 wildfires can be prevented. Brought to you by Smokey Bear, the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council. Learn more at smokeybear.com.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Hi, Tom Bodette. If you can hear me, then you have an internet connection, which means you can do cool things online, like listen to streaming radio, obviously, or watch a video of a monkey washing a cat. Let your freak flag fly. Or you can book a room at a great price at Motel6.com. Isn't the internet wonderful? Everything you want right at your fingertips, and whoa, did not need to see that. I'm Tom Bodette for Motel 6, and we'll leave the light on for you.
This is Jen McGowan, founder of Wayward Souls Promotions, a company dedicated to helping individuals, teams, radio shows, and others that are seeking exposure for their individual events, conventions, and shows. We offer a wide variety of advertising, such as web-based article, social media posts, podcast advertisement, and so on. Contact us at paranormalpromotion@gmail.com, visit us on Facebook at Wayward Souls Promotions, and visit our website at www.waywardsoulspromotions.com.
Excuse me. Thousands of cancer patients can't afford a place to stay when the best treatment is far from home. A room shouldn't be the difference between life and death. Let's make sure that everyone who needs a room gets one. Let's make some noise. Let's help the American Cancer Society finish the fight.
Text ROOM to 41518 to donate $10. Only in the forest can you see this. But nothing beats the moment you see that.
Cool!
That's your child's eyes opening up to a world of possibilities.
There are some moments only the forest can inspire. Find yours at discovertheforest.org. Learn about forests near you and discover cool things to do when you go. And you might just see this. Visit discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to After Hours AM, the Criminal Code. And welcome back to After Hours AM, everybody. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis. Right along with me, as always,
Eric Olsen.
Eric, how's that tuna fish and 1 apple a day diet coming? Are you losing any weight over there? You trying to get down to what? Was it 50 pounds?
No, I want to be 17
Oh,
pounds.
that's what it was.
What I want to be.
Sorry, bad joke. Anyhow, I know. I know. I see. I love hate mail, and so what I do is once in a while, just kind of poke the bear a little bit, just like get the hate mail.
Well,
and
oh look, there's a dead horse. Let's go kick it.
Yeah, it's drawing flies as we speak. But we got a great show tonight on tap. I'm really excited to talk about this.
Me too.
And man, that podcast, we've been talking about it a lot of last hour. As a radio person that's been doing this for years, all my adult life, it really grabbed me. And that's saying something, because a lot of times we'll get a lot of submissions to listen to stuff, audio stuff, radio stuff. Usually in 10 minutes, I'm like, okay, yeah, turn it off. Not this, man. I listened to all 6 of the episodes today in one sitting.
That is amazeballs. That's called binging, my friend. Audio binging. Well, let's tell people what it's all about. Wondery, and man, they've been on a roll, creator of the #1 podcast, Dirty John, has launched a new podcast called Young Charlie, a 6-part series that investigates Manson's unlikely path from his troubled childhood in rural West Virginia to the night he sent out the Manson family to commit the most infamous crime in Hollywood history. Young Charlie was written by Hollywood screenwriter and director Larry Brand and debuted at #1 on iTunes November 8th, just 11 days before Manson's death. How did Charles Manson become a cunning, charismatic monster? In August 1969, the world was shocked by the savage murders of movie star Sharon Tate and 4 others at the sprawling Hollywood Hills estate she shared with film director Roman Polanski. When the following night, another couple was brutally slaughtered, panic spread among Los Angeles residents. And I'm telling you, this is me, Eric, talking. I remember. I was there. I was 11 years old. 4 months later, the mastermind behind these vicious crimes was arrested, and the public learned the name that would become synonymous with implacable, almost supernatural evil, Charles Manson. But few knew then or now the full story behind the making of a mass murderer. In this groundbreaking 6-part series, host Tracy Patton is joined by internationally acclaimed actor Charles Lang. Of course, Avatar, most recently Don't Breathe. Wow, what a performance of Don't Breathe.
He
Take
did
listeners on a unique journey investigating Manson's unlikely path from his troubled childhood to the night he sent his followers out to commit the infamous crimes. Who is Larry Brand? Larry Brand's first job in the film industry was as a driver and production assistant to the legendary Orson Welles. Man, you can't ask for much more than that. My first job in the film industry was as driver and production assistant to the legendary softcore Japanese porn people. Following his first
it really was.
film,
No joke, Larry.
No joke. The psychological thriller Backfire, co-written with frequent collaborator Rebecca Reynolds. He went on to write, direct, and co-star in The Drifter, Mask of the Red Death, and Overexposed for indie producer Roger Corman. Wow, another amazing connection. We're talking cornerstones of film history. Over the past 2.5 decades, with budgets ranging from $15,000 to $15 million, his films have included the award-winning Independence Paranoia and Christina, and studio productions Hard Luck with Wesley Snipes, Halloween Resurrection with Jamie Lee Curtis, which went on to become the second most profitable sequel in the franchise's history. In 2008, he formed 8180 Films with partners Rebecca Reynolds and James Carpenter. Their first feature, Christina, went on to win major awards at the film festival circuit. 8180's They Coexist comedy tour, directed and edited by Brand, is 2013's recipient of Best Documentary Feature. Wow. Additional films. A Perfect Man. What else did we do? We went on to include the noir thriller, The Girl on the Train. Now, that's a different one. I was confused there for a minute. This is 2013. This wasn't the one that came out more recently. This was the first one. The Girl on the Train, written and directed by Brand, starring Henry Ian Cusick of Lost fame, and Nikki Acox, I believe it's Acox, and Stephen Lang himself. 8180's most recent production, Beyond Glory, directed by Brand, and starring Stephen Lang and Gary Sinise, was released across all platforms in October 2016. Mm-hmm. This year, Reynolds and Carpenter co-created Hollywood and Crime, the parent podcast to Young Charlie, and hence Larry Brand's presence here. Welcome to the program, Larry Brand.
Welcome, guys. I appreciate the recap of my bio. I didn't realize I'd done all that stuff.
You're a little busy. You're
now, just as an interesting aside, I did work for Orson back in the day. It was my first Hollywood gig, and he lived right down the road from the Cielo Drive house where the Tate murders occurred. And this is already, we're talking late 70s. It was a good decade afterwards. And people would still drive by and ask directions to go to see the infamous house. So my very first job, kind of circles back to that very strange connection. But I think if you've been in Hollywood long enough, you find these strange connections with Manson. One of my good friends is a terrific actor. He was a big star in the 70s named Clu Gulager. He's in his 80s now. And he remembers Charlie coming by and playing songs. He'd always have his guitar with him, and he'd be playing songs, and he'd show up on the Universal lot. and he would play for Clue, this old buddy of mine, and it turns out I realized that one of my friends back in the 80s was Sharon Tate's agent. So if you've lived in Hollywood, and I've lived in Hollywood now over 30, I've been making movies for 30 years. You find all these connections with Manson that you didn't know you had. So it's a little bit creepy, actually.
Yeah.
But,
well, and he touches on the music industry.
He really does.
The Beatles and the Beach Boys.
Yeah, he does. And what I did not know, of course, I think his connection with Dennis Wilson is pretty well known. But what I didn't know, and I discovered in my research, was that he actually wrote a song that wound up on one of the Beach Boys albums. And Dennis had taken his name, taken Charlie's name off of it, and renamed it and changed the words, and that really angered Charlie, because he said, you can fiddle with the arrangement if you want, but you cannot change my words. So Charlie really went through the roof when he finds out that his song is on the album. Yeah. He's not credited, and Dennis had changed the lyrics, but he had to kind of hold himself back because he still wanted the entree into the industry that Dennis's relationships with people like Terry Melcher and Glenn Jacobson provided him. So he was in a state of rage, but he didn't act on it because he still owed Dennis enough courtesy to use him to gain access to these more influential figures.
Yeah, and of course Charles Manson, by all accounts, didn't have a lot of talent. I did read an interview by Neil Young that just kind of said the guy he just spewed songs out, really no rhyme, no reason. I mean, interesting stuff, but it was nothing that he could really use.
Well, yeah, Young's opinion was that he had a really great ability to improvise lyrics.
Yeah.
But you're right. I don't think that when you look at the real industry insiders and professionals, people who would produce Neil Young and produce the Beach Boys, felt he had any remarkable talent. Now, did he have less talent than maybe dozens of other people who might have made it at some level? It's hard to say. I've heard some of his material. To me, I'm not a musician. I'm not an expert in music, but I would concur that with the prevailing attitude at the time, which is that he was no more or less talented than any of a dozen young guys coming into Hollywood to make a name for themselves in those days. He was average.
Yeah, he really didn't have the look, though. He always looked crazy.
He did. He looked crazy, and it's funny if you look at, and obviously I had to do a ton of research, and I looked at a lot of these interviews as well as reading bios and articles, and if you look at the infamous Diane Sawyer interview he did, I think it dates back to the 90s.
1994.
Yep. I'm sorry?
1994. In fact, I watched
it on
YouTube.
1994.
Yeah.
If you look at it when he's on camera with her, he's the crazy Charlie. He does the bug eyes. He has the weird kind of way of expressing himself. If you watch the way he interacts with him when the main cameras are off, but they're still rolling, but they're as far as he knows they're off, he seems much more normal. And what I discovered in the research was that when he was a kid and he was incarcerated, maybe 12, 13, 14 years old, he was always a runt. He was always he was always small. He couldn't physically defend himself. And he would go into this crazy state. He'd flail his arms and he'd bug his eyes and he'd start shrieking and making animal noises. And nobody wants to fight a crazy guy, right? I mean, that's the basic rule.
No one ever goes full crazy.
Big guy than a crazy guy.
No one ever goes.
And he would get away with that, and he did that throughout his life. And in a lot of these interviews, it's like if you're aware of that, it's like that's just Charlie. That's just Charlie's act. He's been doing that since he was 12 years old. So was he crazy? I mean, he was crazy. Yeah, he certainly wasn't what we would consider normal, but he was not crazy in a legal sense. He was not crazy, I think, in most psychiatric senses, although there were some indications of schizophrenia later in his life. But I think, honestly, most of it was an act.
I agree with you. I mean, he kind of reminds me of that Tropic Thunder line. No, don't ever go full crazy. Except it wasn't crazy.
There you go.
But he went full crazy, and he really bought into his own PR, though. Charlie did in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's very hard to. Here's the way I would like it. Even people who are by no means crazy, by no means outside of the norm. There's that moment when you're feeling a certain way, and exactly that song comes on the radio, or somehow the universe is speaking to you, and you don't act on it if you're sane. You don't take it that seriously. Yeah. But there's this human tendency to kind of believe in a narrative, and I think with Charlie, it always walked that line of, did he really think he was going to initiate this Armageddon, this helter-skelter, this racial war that was going to cause a worldwide conflagration? I don't know. I think on one level he believed it. On one level, he probably would have been as surprised as anybody else if it ever came to pass. So I think it's these kind of the kind of split in the way to look at him and the way he looked at himself that really makes this an intriguing story. And that's what I try to get at is did these kids actually believe this, or were they infatuated by the desire to believe? Was it their romance with the idea of Charlie rather than the actual persona of Charlie, or the personality he presented to them?
I'm reminded of this line. And I'm trying to think, was it Vonnegut? I think maybe it was Vonnegut. I'll have to stop and think about it for a minute. But it's been used by others, but it sounds like it's applicable here. Is you become what you pretend to be. And so eventually, if you're convincing enough, you not only convince others, you convince yourself.
I think it is Vonnegut. I think you're correct. And I think, I've used that line somewhere too. I think,
or a great line,
or more contemporarily.
And I've always said that writing is stealing, and good writing is clever stealing. I hope I figured out a way to say it in somewhat different words. But yeah, I think it is Vonnegut, and I think that. I think it's true, and I think if what happens is if you get support, I think you see you see a lot of show business personalities, especially those who make it when they start young, wind up acting badly, and that's the phrase acting badly. And I think what happens is if you're beaten down by the system, if you're not getting that reward from your sense of self, then you probably are humbled by it, and if you make it later in life, you're probably a little bit better off. I think if you're 25 and nobody's ever said no, and your self image is reinforced by those around you, then I think you tend to never really grow up or never mature. And Charlie was a sociopath. He was a sociopath probably from birth. I mean, there's evidence now. I just read an article in Atlantic about 2-3 months ago. I think it was the June edition actually, where they talk about seeing signs of sociopathy in children as young as 3 years old. So I don't think Charlie would have ever been a model citizen. But if you find yourself in a time and place where you've got these people, these kids that worship you and are mirroring back to you your own grand vision of yourself, then that's a recipe for some kind of calamity. And obviously, in this case, it's in retrospect that happened, but and it could not have been predicted. But it's not hard to understand how that happened, given his personality and given the time and place he found himself in.
But he also used the drug LSD to great extent to really convince his members.
He did, and in fact, you've done your research. Yeah, he did, and what he did was he would take very minimal doses himself. He was not a big drug user. He frowned on alcohol. They didn't really like alcohol at all, as was kind of common. I remember when I was a kid, it was considered déclassé when it turned out that Jim Morrison drank a lot. That was kind of okay, LSD and marijuana. I mean, that's one thing, but alcohol was that's our parents' generation. That's kind of passé. Yeah. So I think that he bought into that, but he was very big into the psychedelics. But he absolutely, you're right. He manipulated the followers, and he'd give them large doses, and he would take fairly minimal doses himself to keep. So he wanted to keep in control. He wanted to be able to control them, and in order to do that, he had to control himself.
Well, he can't control the sheep if he's one of them. If he is a sheep,
exactly.
Because every flock, there's got to be a wolf, and he was that wolf.
Absolutely. I think I even have a line in one of the episodes that he begins to learn when he's in prison, and he's kind of observing. He's really fascinated by not so much the tougher, the big guys who dominate by physical power or intimidation. He's really intrigued by the pimps and the con men and the hustlers and their ability to insinuate themselves in people's minds. And there's a point where he realizes that the greatest asset is if you realize what you are. If you to know you're a lion is one thing, but to be among sheep who don't realize they're sheep, that gives you real power.
Well,
and
exactly.
that's kind of a line I think I used somewhere in the show, actually.
It's psychological, lack of a better term, warfare in a lot of ways, what they used to call it in the CIA. That's why they developed LSD. Is so people would be very compliant and they could force a narrative on them to believe things.
Right.
And so he just did exactly what the drug was intended for. It was actually intended to make people compliant to someone else's will.
Right. Well, I mean, the CIA did. You're talking about the experiments in the 1950s.
Yeah, because they were looking for.
I'm not an expert in that area, but I know what you're talking about, and there's the famous incident of the guy who either was pushed or jumped or fell out of the window, and an infamous case, and I believe they actually exhumed his body not that long ago to see if they could come to some kind of conclusion about how he died. But you're right. I mean, it was certainly used as experimentally to see if they could. I mean, ultimately was not successful.
No.
And it's too unpredictable a drug. But I think in the hands of a lesser con artist than Charlie, it would not have had the effect. I think you have to remember Charlie was 32 years old when he got out of prison. He spent 17 years of his life in prison by the time he got out. Mm-hmm. So by the time he meets these kids in the Summer of Love, 1967 in San Francisco, he's a 35-year-old con. And these are 18, 19. I think the youngest one, Diane Lake, was 14 years old. I think the oldest might have been, Linda Kasabian might have been 24, 25. So he's essentially dealing with kind of spoiled, often middle-class kids who just did not know what they were up against. This was a seasoned con artist, and as well as convict.
I was going to say, why don't you take us a little bit for the audience that may not really have a good understanding of who Charles Manson, how he was
run
formed,
us through the highlights.
What was his early stages of life like? What was his mother like? That would,
Well, contrary to, I think it's already been kind of, it's been long understood that he had exaggerated the his own childhood, and we know now and for years that his mother was not really. He presented her as a prostitute, a young prostitute, a teenage. Yeah. She was an unwed mother. That part's true. She married the guy who would ultimately give him the name Manson, and he left, I think, fairly soon. So Charlie never knew his father, barely knew his stepfather. But did he have a childhood that was any harsher than millions of kids during the Depression? Probably not. His mother, by all accounts, had affection for him. She wasn't the greatest mother in the world. She did have her own brush with crime when she and her brother Luther, who was a little bit more of a real criminal, had held up somebody with a ketchup bottle, poking a ketchup bottle in his back and pretending it's a gun, and the guy realized it, and then Luther hit him over the head, smacked him, took his car, took his money, and they were caught within a day or two. And the show actually begins with one of Charlie's early memories, which is watching his mother as a 4 or 5-year-old, watching his mother being dragged off to jail and ultimately to spend 5 years in prison. So obviously not an ideal childhood by a long shot, but he went to live with his grandmother, who by all accounts was loving, a God-fearing woman, as they used to say in those days, and his uncle and aunt, Bob and Gemma, and his perfectly fine cousin, Joanne, who was, again, by all accounts, just a normal, likable kid. So he had it. He didn't have an easy life, but there are millions of kids who had lives as hard as his, who didn't turn out to be Charlie Manson, didn't turn out to be sociopaths. Yeah. The earliest recollections of those around him Uncle Bob, was of his ability to manipulate people through words. He always was the center of attention. He was always spinning these word webs like spider webs to ensnare people, and truth didn't matter, lie didn't matter. He would use words in this manipulative. Even as a young child, he was already showing this tendency to be able to manipulate. But I think when he was maybe 10 or 11, he assaulted his cousin with a scythe. One of those kind of a farm implement
from New
York. But she was convinced he would have used it had the parents not walked in. So he was showing violence from as far back in the historical record as we can peer. He was showing signs of sociopathy. And as I said, by the time he was 12, 13, he'd already been in reformatories. He had one of the signature features of a sociopath is immediate gratification without any sense of future results, without any consequences. I mean, the obvious thing about sociopathy is that you don't have conventional feelings of sympathy for other people.
No remorse whatsoever.
You're narcissistic.
Yeah, exactly.
But just I was going to give this one example where he was due out. He was a couple of weeks away from parole from one of these institutions. I think he was 12 or 13 years old, and he sees an unguarded young boy, and he assaults him and sexually assaults him with a razor to his throat, and just immediately losing any chance of being set free, because at that moment that was what he wanted. And that's this other signature feature of a sociopath. It's what I want now, and it's not worrying about what's going to happen in 5 minutes or 5 days.
Yeah, that's you're absolutely correct. That is the hallmark. It's what was I going to say? It's impulse control is very limited to these kind of people.
Right.
The impulse control just isn't there, and whatever feels good at that moment, they're going to do it. Damn the consequences, or don't even think about the consequences.
Absolutely.
So, textbook case, Charlie Manson, of someone with a psychopathy.
Yes. Yeah, I would think so, and it's always possible to go in and after the fact see all these threads that seem to indicate a sense of inevitability about what was to come to pass. And it's easy to do in retrospect, but there were probably, as I said, there were millions of kids who went through the Depression who didn't become Charlie Manson. There are probably thousands of people who had inclinations towards sociopathy who didn't become Charlie Manson. Charlie Manson would not have become Charlie Manson in any other time in any other place. He could easily have lived his life as a garden variety criminal. His big goal in life was to be a pimp. He was stealing cars since he was a teenager. He'd engaged in a couple of armed robberies. Nobody was ever hurt. It's not hard to imagine a counterfactual Earth where Charlie Manson is, it just lives his life. If he hadn't been sent to California, if he'd wound up in another state, if he'd never seen San Francisco, it would have been a whole other life. Now, would he have been an upstanding citizen? No, I don't think so. I think there's no counterfactual in which Charlie Manson, becomes a neurosurgeon. But is it certainly possible that he would have been an unknown figure that just melded with the rest of the casual underworld? Absolutely. Yeah. But he found himself in a time and place that was so suited to his particular talents, his particular ability to use words to manipulate people, that it was this kind of dark synergy of the moment that created a Charlie Manson.
Sure. That I 100% agree with that. There's that dark underlying of that whole time and place that was perfect fertile breeding grounds for that kind of person to emerge. And they wanted a person like him to emerge. A lot of these people, they wanted a leader of the counterculture. Am I correct? And he kind of fit that bill, that time and place.
Yeah, no, one of my favorite segments in the series, in the show, is we try to create these audio landscapes. As I said before, I think we're trying to make a movie for the ears, so we want to immerse the people in these twin narratives. That the way the story, you guys know because you've listened to the episodes. The way the story is structured, Tracy Patton begins her narrative the morning the murders are discovered, and her narrative is entirely from the perspective of the authorities who don't know what the hell happened and are trying to figure it out and trying to come piece after piece after piece until eventually Susan Atkins starts talking. She's in prison. So we're looking at it from the aspect of the authorities who are just trying to find out what happened, and we take that from the beginning, from the moment of the murders to when he's arraigned. The young Charlie, which is narrated by Stephen Lang, who was kind enough to come in from shooting Avatar. The great thing about Lang was, he's in a 40-foot vat of water with Jim Cameron shooting Avatar on Friday and on Monday, and over the weekend he comes in to do our podcast. He's just a great guy. We've done three movies together,
great job.
But the Lang narrative is from Charlie from the age of 5 to the moment that he sends those kids out to commit these murders, and that's the interior Charlie. That's the narrative. That's the monologue, the interior monologue. And one of my favorite points in that narrative is when he's in San Francisco during the Summer of Love, and we try to create this immersive enviment of hearing the streets, and you're hearing these creatures, and you're hearing Hare Krishna, and you're hearing all these rhythms going on. And but there were street corner gurus wherever you turn, and he learned from all of them.
Well, Larry, we have to run a break. We'll be right back. We'll dive further into the counterculture. We'll dive really headlong into the murders, and of course the aftermath of the murders, and who he really got to do these murders. Be right back.
Gotcha.
After Hours AM, the Criminal Code. Will be right back after a word from these sponsors.
Green light. Hey girl, school zone. I'm getting hungry. Car changing lanes. You want to meet me for pizza? Stop sign. Intersection clear. Yeah, street. Pizza sounds good. Ballin Street? Girlin Street!
It's hard to concentrate on two things at once, like texting and driving. Stop the text, stop the wrecks. How will you stop texting and driving? Tell us at stoptextstoprex.org. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
This is Jen McGowan, founder of Wayward Souls Promotions, a company dedicated to helping individuals, teens, radio shows, and others that are seeking exposure for their individual events, conventions, and shows. We offer a wide variety of advertising, such as web-based article, social media posts, podcast advertisement, and so on. Contact us at paranormalpromotion@gmail.com, visit us on Facebook at Wayward Souls Promotions, and visit our website at www.waywardsoulspromotions.com.
Welcome back to After Hours AM, the Criminal Code. And welcome back to After Hours AM. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis, and right along with me,
Eric Olsen.
And we are really just digging deep into who Charles Manson was with Larry Brand. Larry Brand is not only a filmmaker of really great note and wonderful films, but he's also made, and he's a part of, making this awesome podcast. I mean, I don't even consider the darn thing a podcast, to be honest with you. It's a theater of the mind going on here. Full blown, like close your eyes and you can imagine everything, called Young Charlie. You're going to want to go over there, check it out. It's a 6-episode run. You're going to want to listen to it all. I do believe you debuted number one on iPod. Oh boy, iTunes. Sorry about that. Brain part. iTunes, you guys debuted number one, so it's really worth your time. If you haven't heard anything like this before, this is a great one to start on. Is take a listen to this, and it really takes you through point A to point B of who Charles Manson was all the way through the murders. So you definitely want to check that out. Getting back to the show, of course, we have Larry Brand with us, and we were really talking about how Charlie kind of rose to power in the counterculture, and how they were like, it was like shooting fish in a barrel for this con artist. I mean, these kids were just in awe of this guy, weren't they?
Yeah, I think that as we were alluding to in the earlier segment, these kids were seekers, and I mean, even without the drugs, I think there was this expectation in the 1960s that the world was going to change, that we were on the precipice of this age of Aquarius, love generation. I think what is incredibly emblematic of the power of the Manson story is, I remember back in the 90s they came out with a new print of the movie Woodstock. It's like a 3 or 4 hour print, and they screened it at the Directors Guild in LA, and I hadn't seen it in years, and it was really quite a remarkable movie in its own right. But there was an image that stuck with me years before I ever thought I would be involved with the Charlie Manson story. In the background of one of those shots at Woodstock is a newspaper headline in one of those glass boxes where they would keep newspapers about the murders. And I thought, this is absolutely remarkable that these two events occurred at virtually the same historic moment. And as I was researching this, another thing hit me, which I just never thought about. Less than 3 weeks before the murders, Neil Armstrong set foot on the moon. So you have this, on the one hand, this crowning technological achievement of mankind, in which America took a deservedly enormous pride. You have this counterculture kind of nirvana of Woodstock, the so-called 4 Days of Peace and Love, which was just the apotheosis of everything that we really thought this generation was about. And at the same time, virtually the same time, you have these grisly, gruesome, grotesque murders taking place by people who visually and in every respect seemed indistinguishable from those same kids that were frolicking in the mud. It was this the cosmic irony of looking at these two sides of this generation, this kind of hopeful, expectant, we are different from our parents, we are better, this kind of moral high-handedness that, was bought into by a generation. And it's almost as if the cosmos are saying, just, let's pull back on the hubris a little bit. You're human beings after all. This is the dark side. This is the other side of that. And I think that's why it's gripped the imagination of the country and the world for almost 50 years now.
Oh, I agree.
I think that the historical irony of the juxtaposition of those two events is remarkable. If I created that as a writer, it would be too on the money. It would be too, no, nobody's going to buy that.
Yeah.
It's just a little too convenient.
I think, speaking of Woodstock and the yin and the yang, the light and the dark, I think for a similar type event, the dark side, of course, was Altamont, right, which came along a little bit later, and we really saw the ugliness that could be present, and what that did was point out how truly remarkable Woodstock was, because it was so spontaneous. They didn't sell a quarter of the tickets to the people that just showed up.
It was a huge financial disaster for the.
They just broke down the gates. I mean, there weren't even gates; it was like fences, right?
Yeah.
And so the fact that it was so peaceful and it was this apotheosis, it really is an amazing thing. But I agree with you entirely. You saw the underside at almost the exact same time that it was going on, kind of on the other side of the country. Ironically, right in the middle of L.A., which was supposed to be, the land of sunshine, nuts, and fruits, and you had this going on here. I think you mentioned at some point the Doors. Oh, you were talking about drinking. You're talking about Jim. He kind of embodied in a way both sides. sides. And I think maybe that's part of his enduring power, is he represented both sides.
Well, he was the Lizard King.
He was a poet. He was the Lizard King. He really did live what he preached. There was a positivity to it, but oh my, on the personal side, I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find someone more self-destructive who had that level of talent and that level of notoriety. Imagine to drink yourself to death at age 27.
Right. Well, it's interesting. You picked up on that that casual reference. I probably, as a writer, when you're primarily a filmmaker, your influences tend to be other filmmakers, whether it's of the past, Hitchcock or current older filmmakers like Scorsese or modern. I tend to be as influenced by contemporaries like Tarantino and the Coen brothers as by filmmakers of the past. But I would say that as a writer, in terms of dialogue, the way I structure dialogue, the way the imagery, the most influential artist on me has always been Jim Morrison, and I think for those who are real fans or aficionados of the Doors music, you will probably find quite a few little rhythmic references, sometimes actual lifts from lines of Morrison poetry or Morrison songs. There's one line there that I know it's a ripoff, but I'm not sure exactly from what song. I just rhythmically and the imagery, I know it's a Jim Morrison lick, although I don't even know where he stops and where I begin in lyrically in this particular piece. So I try to very consciously incorporate Morrison-esque rhythms, and so much of when I get into Charlie's brain, when I get into Charlie's interior state, which is what I'm trying to do. The one thing, look, people know the Charlie Manson story. I hope that they will learn things they might not have known about the intricacies of what went on and how it went on. But the real thing I wanted to do that it was important for me to come at it from an angle that has not been achieved yet, or as far as I'm aware, which is to enter the minds of the followers, and see how he did what he did, so that by the end of the series, by the end of the 6 episodes, it will still be bizarre, it will still be horrific, but it won't be inexplicable. I think the entry into Charlie's mind is opens a light in this kind of dark cavern of evil that at least makes it understandable. And the way for me to do that is through the rhythms of language. And there's several reveries that I score very precisely. It's scored really kind of like the way a movie is scored, to undercut his use of language as a rhythmic device. He even thinks, and part of his reveries are about, it's more the cadence, it's more the way you say it, it's more the rhythms of language than what you're actually saying. Mm-hmm. And so, thank God we have an actor at the level of Stephen Lang who can kind of get into the soul of the words and perform them the way that we can imagine would have been the kind of internal monologue that would be going through Charlie's mind.
Wow.
Man,
that is some powerful stuff. Do you think, you mentioned evil, do you think he was always evil, or did he become evil? Was he enabled by these powers to become evil? And before you answer that, as you were just talking now about the rhythms and how important they are, and it's really interesting that you tied them in to the Doors. I guess I just picked up you conveyed it somehow, right? Because I picked up on it. But you know who else did that?
Well, you've also listened to the show, so you probably unconsciously picked up on some of that.
True. Another rather well-known figure did just what you're talking about with language, Hitler.
True. Well, it's interesting you say that, because there have been very few great orators of the last 100 years, let's say. And the two that immediately pop into mind that were for the purpose of good would be Churchill and Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
The one obvious one for the power of evil would be Hitler. I think that Charlie, I think the comparison is, what's that law, Godwin's law, about, when you get into a conversation, how long it takes before Hitler's brought up. Yeah. So I think the reference between Hitler and Manson is overstated. But I think in microcosm, not so much. Because in microcosm, Charlie did have, I've looked at, obviously, a lot of footage of him, and his ability to kind of bring together these threads of what to anyone who's actually studied philosophy or is maybe not 18 but 25 even, or 30, and been through this process and been through college and been through bull sessions in dorm rooms. Wasn't particularly sophisticated stuff, kind of naive and simplistic and kind of hippy dippy and love and light is dark and dark is light and life is death. I mean, this wasn't sophisticated stuff. But if you're a relatively naive kid and it's presented to you, it's really compelling. I mean, I found some speeches, some runs that he goes through where he's not at all incoherent, and he's not bugging his eyes, and he's not being crazy Charlie. He's just spouting this philosophy about, was I there? What can you tell what happened in the past? And, if you go into a river, is it the same river that it was yesterday? If it's not the same. I mean, he's kind of, like I say, it's not sophisticated stuff. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're not talking, Husserl or Kierkegaard or Heidegger here. We're talking about a guy who took these kind of simplistic philosophical threads that were extant in the world that he inhabited, and he combined them in his own way, and it was very, very easy to fall under that. And again, the comparison with Hitler. Yeah. Hitler was he took these threads that were out. They were much more primitive, much less subtle. There was no subtlety to Hitler, but the time frame that he existed in, it was very, very effective. Mm-hmm. So even though obviously the scale is orders of magnitude removed, the ability to manipulate through words is something we always have to be careful about.
Well, they were all deep though back then, right? During the hippie movement. I mean, it was all about the meaning of this and that, and very deep thinking, looking further into things. I mean, they weren't really interested in the surface.
Sure. I think look, every generation, when it separates itself from the prior generation, I think does that. I think what differentiates I hate the term because this is so overused, but the baby boom generation is I think we were the first ones, I think, to kind of fetishize this notion of generational separation. It's normal as a human species. We identify with our peers. We try to distance ourselves from our parents' generation. I think that's happened probably ever since there were human beings on some level. But I think we really made it into an art, and it was because of the availability of media and the ability to contact and know about things that were going on across the country and across the world, and this sense of generation. I think the sense of generation was so articulated by the time of the 60s that there was the appearance of movement that, I seem to recall, I'd have to, I don't want to misspeak here, sure. But my recollection of the history of it is that at no point were the majority of young people, if you actually did a survey, against the war in Vietnam. I think maybe it was a push, maybe it was 50-50, maybe the more conservative kids that were not in New York and San Francisco and LA. I don't think the hippies were ever in the majority, but the perception is that they were. The perception is that was they were taking control of this generation. Yeah. And when I was writing the show, one of the other things I did was, we could talk about incorporating Jim's rhythms and lyrics, but I do that throughout. I mean, there's a couple of words from Barry McGuire's Eve of Destruction. There's Rolling Stones lyrics in there. I really wanted to invest it with the flavor of those times. So people who will catch those phrases, they're like little Easter eggs. Yeah. For people who don't, they don't. That's fine. But I wanted there to be these constant little signatures of what it was like to be around in those days, to kind of remind those who were there and inform those who weren't.
It was all about the experience of life back then, is what I got from it as well. I mean, it was experiencing things away from the greatest generation, the previous generation. They wanted to, like you said, detach themselves from that Ozzy and Harriet feeling to being themselves, Age of Aquarius, deeper thinking, things such as that.
I think you're exactly right. I think that the thing that differentiated us, and in fact maybe has every all the so-called Generation X and millennials, I think the kind of watershed of let's say around 1949, 1950, that the Leave It to Beaver kids on, there was a self-consciousness about our differentiation. I think, all generations are different from their parents' generation. That's just automatic. It's understood. But I think there was a self-consciousness about it. I don't think other generations sat there talking about the fact that they were different. I think we were so self-conscious about it. We had to articulate everything about us that was different. And I think that brings with it a lot of hubris. That brings with it this self-satisfaction that, you think about where, and I think one of the reasons that Charlie's story is kind of emblematic and eternal. Well, eternal is a big word because it's only been 50 years, but certainly it's lived. It's transcended his crimes. It's now transcended his life. Is that there are certain elements that are still with us. There's this moral high-handedness. Now it just happens on all sides. If you're a liberal, then the conservatives are deplorable. If you're conservative, well, the liberals are immoral. I mean, there's this kind of moral hubris that just is part. Maybe it's just part of being a human being, and it's nice to think that we could step back from that. But if there's a lesson, listen. People always look for lessons, right? And is there a lesson in Charlie? Yeah, there's no. The first lesson of Charlie is there's no lesson of Charlie. If you're thinking in terms of can this be prevented? No, the answer is no. You cannot prevent one guy from going nuts. You can't prevent a lone assassin. You can't prevent
Larry,
a lone.
But think about this for a second, Larry. It's been 50 years, and we're still talking about on national radio here. But think about this. When you think about cults in America, three that pop out in my mind, you have Jonestown, Branch Davidians, and the Manson family.
Yes.
So, I mean, it's still very relevant to people, and I think people, even to this day, fear somebody like a Charlie Manson. Whether they want to admit it or not, that kind of person is still feared.
I think the reason that he has, look, most of what I write is fiction. Most of what I write is, I've written comedies, Coax's Comedy Tour for anybody who wants to look at the completely different picture. But most of what I write is dark, and most of what I write is about fictional boogeymen, for want of a better word. Well, this is a real one. This was the real guy who, and I think the real fear that he instilled in now, I guess, two generations of people is when there's a crime committed, we always have this human tendency to think or to, in a way, hope, well, that guy was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Why did he walk in that neighborhood? Why did he go into that bar?
Sure.
Well, these people were in the comfort of their own homes. They had no expectation of anything other than spending a pleasant evening together. They did nothing wrong. The police, assumed it was a drug deal. It had nothing to do with drugs. They assumed it was a gambling debt. Nothing to do with that. These people did nothing wrong.
And wrong place. They just happened to live at the wrong address.
Exactly, because Terry Melcher had rented that house before them, and he hated Terry. And they knew, by the way, Terry was not there. They didn't care. They knew that address. They were familiar with that address. They knew the layout of the. It was basically go there and kill whoever is there. Yep. I don't know if it's a misconception or not, but the idea that they thought Terry Melcher was there. No, they knew quite well Terry Melcher had already moved because Charlie had been to the house. Charlie had actually seen Sharon Tate very briefly when he went to accost Melcher after Melcher had not shown up for one of Charlie's supposed auditions, and they met. They actually had eye contact for a few seconds, and then he went to the guest house and spoke to Rudy Altobelli, who owned the property, and said, "Well, Melcher's no longer here." They knew Melcher wasn't there, so these were the most innocent of victims, and they were people that we would assume were beyond the kind of street crime or random. These were privileged, wealthy people who we kind of put on in that sphere of, well, I may not be safe, but they sure are.
Well, Larry, is there a certain point maybe when you're so high up in Hollywood, do you feel like you're untouchable by the common man? And then you have this common
I haven't gotten there. I'll let you know.
Well, I'm just saying, if you had to think for yourself, not you personally, but what I'm saying is, was there at least back then an element of being out of touch when you're in that an actress or an actor almost looked upon as royalty? And
I think there's something to. I think there is something to that, and I think the way you know that is by the reaction where you had Jerry Lewis putting video cameras and now Steve McQueen riding around with a gun in his car, and Tony Bennett moving out of the guest house at the Beverly Hills Hotel into the interior. I think there probably was a sense. I think now, because of high profile assassinations and crimes like this, I don't think that exists now. I think there certainly is always this kind of separation attendant upon a certain level of celebrity, that you do feel yourself special and you do feel yourself privileged and above it all. But I don't think there's a sense. I don't think since Charlie there's been a sense of physical security, as there probably would have been in the 1950s and early 60s. I think that has probably changed because of Charlie. Yeah, I think if you're George Clooney or any high profile celebrity these days, you probably have a bodyguard.
Yeah, I agree. And today's such a different world from then, because right now our stars only tweet away. I mean, where we can actually connect with them. Where Charlie was, he showed the vulnerability in some ways of how quickly things can be taken away. Like Sharon Tate. I mean, that poor lady was pregnant, ready to give birth really any time, and they didn't give a damn. And the lady that killed her gave birth just 10 months beforehand. It's mind-boggling.
Right, and she had it. You're talking about Susan Atkins.
Yeah.
And Susan Atkins actually had it in her mind to cut the baby out of Sharon's belly and present it to Charlie as a gift. I mean, if you can imagine that. And it's unclear, depending on which version you hear of Susan Atkins, because her story would waver from time to time, whether they didn't have time or she couldn't go through with it is unclear. But the fact that thought even occurred to her, as you point out, she'd had her own kid 10 months ago.
Yeah.
The lack of empathy, just on a basic human level. And I think the other thing that really touches us, a very deep chord in our just primal fears, is the gratuitous nature of the crime. I think any murder, by definition, is horrible. But there's certain murders we understand. We understand revenge. We understand sexual jealousy. We understand even murder for money. I mean, they're all horrible, but at least we can contextualize them.
You can wrap your mind around it to get a motive and understand why
exactly.
it happened.
You want the motive, and these were murders that were at least by appearance, murder for the joy of murder. And that, we touched on the subject of evil. Was Charlie evil? Was he not? I mean, evil is kind of more of a religious question than I was prepared to answer in the context of that's a whole other show, maybe, the idea of evil. But I read a really interesting book years ago, I think it was called Evil, and they talked about pure evil having a kind of gratuitous quality to it. It's the enjoyment of somebody else's suffering, the enjoyment of somebody else's pain.
Larry, I hate to cut you off. We got about a minute left of the show. It just flew right on by. So why don't you tell our listeners how they can get the shows and hear it for themselves?
Well, it's called Young Charlie by Hollywood and Crime. It's on iTunes. You can go to Wondery.com and see it. You can go to iTunes and find it. Young Charlie by Hollywood and Crime. I believe it's also being re-released on the Hollywood and Crime site as well on Friday. I think we're up to episode 3 or 4. We're up to episode 3 now. I think 4 is going to be released next week. And, I hope you enjoy it. And so far, it's been getting a pretty good response.
Hey, guys, definitely tune in, download it. I love it. I'm going to listen to it all over again, probably tomorrow while I'm getting the turkey ready for Thanksgiving. Hand in hand, But, take care of each other, love each other, and listen to Young Charlie. You're going to love it. Till next time, guys. See you later.